everyone for joining in this evening. As such, we are now live on Facebook, and thanks so much, Mr. K.P.Singh, for hosting us this evening for this session on ETS, TOEFL, and GRE tests with IMFS. We have Michelle Hampton here with us today. Michelle is the Global Institutional Relations Director at ETS, and she'll take us through, insights into both the GRE and the TOEFL tests. And we also, have that followed by Mr. K.P.Singh, where he'll give insights to students with regard to their study abroad journey and application process. So over to you, Mr. Singh, with regard to introducing, if you could introduce yourself as well, and we can then start the session, Michelle. Thanks.
Right. Thank you very much, Siddharth. First of all, it's a matter of great joy that I speak in front of such a distinguished panel. What's very interesting to note is that numbers of students from India to the United States is growing, and us to sit down with you at ETS today and to understand how the entire process of education abroad can take off. So obviously, for anybody to enter into the US, you need to have qualified via some entrance exams. What are those entrance exams? Well, the most paramount of them, of course, is for everybody, which is TOEFL. You need to prove your ability in English and as a language. And that's where TOEFL comes into play. And then I'm sure as Indians, we all know that to get into an IIT, you have to give the joint entrance exam, the so-called, the much wanted JEE. In much the same manner, you want to get into a good university in the United States, you have to give the GRE, the Graduate Record Exam, to enter into a top-notch program. So both of these exams, TOEFL and GRE, are of course owned, controlled, and run by ETS. And IMFS is an extremely proud partner of ETS in India. And today we are privileged to host Michelle and Siddharth and Sarfraz from ETS to talk to you about the TOEFL and the GRE. Of course, IMFS is one of the leading institutions in India. We are now celebrating our 25th year of existence. We were formed exactly in 1997, and over the years, we've helped over 50,000 students achieve their dreams of studies abroad in countries like America. We, of course, will talk more about that process, how you can go abroad, how you can fund your studies, what are the various things universities look at when they're admitting you. We'll talk of that post the presentation by Michelle. So over to you, Michelle. I hope you have a wonderful day talking to these amazing students from India. Michelle, over to you.
Thank you so much. I am so delighted to be a part of this session today. And I want to thank everyone for making the time to join us. I hope that the information that you gather today will help you inform your process to become a student at an institution in the US and to be successful in your graduate studies. So first, let's talk about the TOEFL test. And actually, I don't know if you can see my screen. Let's see if I can get it to be shared, or if the folks can help me share my slides. I don't quite see how to share them.
Parvinder, if you could just help guide Michelle through the process.
Thank you.
Michelle, you see a share screen button below? On the Zoom window, below there'll be a share screen button there.
I don't see share. I have leave, I have my microphone, I have the camera, and I have the ellipsis. Participants invite chat, record on to the cloud, breakout rooms. But I don't have a share.
Okay.
Well, what I'll do, Mission, is I'll probably share the screen with the presentation so that if you could direct me, I'd be able to move it on to the next screen. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I appreciate that, Siddharth. And I apologize, team, but you know, technology happens, but the good news is we'll be able to share the screens. And as he's bringing them up, I just want to reinforce what was stated, that of course, we do understand that there are going to be institutions that will require students who are multilingual, as many of you are, to take a TOEFL test to demonstrate your proficiency of English. And that is really the intent and the purpose behind this test. Thank you, Siddharth. So in talking about TOEFL, this is what we'll cover. We'll look at the test itself in an overview. We'll discuss where it's accepted, the test format, the sections of it, the enhancements that we've recently made really since 2019 going forward, how you can best prepare for the test, why institutions require and accept TOEFL, and then the registration process, and then the unique opportunity to be able to take the test at home in a safe, secure environment, which is particularly important at this point in time. And we'll go to question and answer as well. Thank you. So TOEFL has always been committed, since it was created in 1964, to helping students achieve their dreams of university study. And that's been true worldwide. Ever since it was offered, it has been a way for English-speaking institutions to have confidence in the ability of the students to be able to thrive and perform well academically from the moment they arrive. And that's really the goal here. So we assess you in 4 different areas: your writing, reading, speaking, and listening abilities in English. Because again, we know that that's critical, not only in your communication in the classroom, but in your overall communication in a university setting. So we do try to incorporate the feedback we get from test takers and score users to make changes and update the test as times and needs evolve. And it's with all of those improvements that we're able to make sure that we're not sacrificing quality or validity. Next slide, please. So the test itself, as I mentioned, measures the 4 critical skills of communication, and that is reading, listening, speaking, and writing. And as a matter of fact, the sections of the test are given in that order. You do the reading, the listening, the speaking, and the writing in that sequence. It is 100% academic in its content. We brought in university lecturers to our offices and recorded their presentations and used the textbooks to create the questions that are a part of the test. So it's not that it has to be academic specific or discipline specific, but rather we wanted to make sure that the students are able to demonstrate that they can follow a lecture, communicate what was conveyed to them in what was spoken by the professor or what was discussed by 2 individuals, what they read in that textbook. And that kind of a combination is called an integrated task. So those integrated questions are what we use to make the TOEFL unique. And that's been one of the important features that universities have relied on for all these 50+ years. The scores are valid for 2 years from the day you take it, because we know that if you go immediately into an English-speaking environment, your skills will improve over time. And if you are a student who does not immediately go into that environment, your skills might wane a bit, but you can always reassess to get a more accurate sense of your abilities. We do find that it's important for students to, it's all right, you can go ahead. We do find that it's important for students to know that in the acceptance standpoint, there are certain things that the institutions are looking for. And let's take a look at that now. So institutions across the world, as I mentioned, have always been accepting the TOEFL test scores from students since 1964. But in particular, and what is probably most important to you, is the fact that not only are universities in general accepting it, but in particular, we can say that the Russell Group in the UK are accepting TOEFL scores. The U15 in Canada, also research-oriented universities, and the Group of 8 in Australia and the 8 Ivy League institutions in the US, as well as the major research universities, are all accepting TOEFL scores. So you can certainly find that you'll be able to go to the institution of your dreams with the scores that you'll produce. Next slide, please. In particular, TOEFL, as we know, was created by a US company, and it was designed to give the US institutions, again, confidence in the scores that the students are producing. But it is definitely a situation where 9 out of 10 American universities prefer TOEFL as the English proficiency test score that they get from students because they are most familiar with it and quite comfortable with it. So if your desire is to attend institutions in the US, definitely consider it. And when we introduced the home edition version of the TOEFL IBT test, take comfort in the fact that since it is identical to the test that we give in the test centers, we have been able to have all 11,000 plus institutions, organizations, fellowship programs that accept the TOEFL IBT from test centers also accept the IBT Home Edition test. So you have the option of taking it in either format. Next slide, please. Now we're going to take a look at exactly the kinds of things we've changed about the test. Next, please. So since 2019, we've been able to institute several different enhancements that have made the test much better experience for students. So for starting at the bottom of this example here, we made the registration process easier. You can now do it on your mobile phone, whether you have an Android or an Apple phone. You'll also find that in registering online on your phone or online, you have access to a Google Map feature so that you can truly see exactly where that test center is if you're choosing to take it in person in a center. Obviously, if you're registering to test at home, you know where you can do that. And then the My Best scores are a way for us to take your highest section scores out of multiple attempts at the TOEFL scores that are currently valid and highlight them in addition to the single test date scores that you're providing to an institution so that you can demonstrate in shorter, fewer attempts your best possible scores. And for many institutions, they are considering those for admission as well. We've shortened the test, so it's now just 3 hours in length, which puts it on par with the other English language proficiency tests that are available out there. We offer afternoon test times because we know for many students, some due to their work hours or their school hours, they find it's difficult to be able to test during the day. So having the later shift, the afternoon testing time, does give them more flexibility to be able to fit in a test in their day. We offer free practice test, it's full length, and you automatically receive that. So students are able to then really be prepared without having to worry about, oh, I've got to remember to schedule to place an order for a free practice test. We also offer free and faster score reporting. So we're able to get you your results within 6 days after taking the test, which is much quicker than it used to be. And they'll appear in your online score profile so that you'll be able to see them. And we've extended the registration window so you can register for the test up to 2 days before the actual test administration that you'd like to take. And at the end of the testing experience on test day, as well as with our full-length practice tests, you will automatically be shown your estimated reading and listening results because those 2 sections of the test are machine scored. So we can automatically show you how you performed on those 2 sections. All of those are enhancements that can give you greater confidence in your performance on test day. Next slide, please. We think that these sort of changes are not only good for your opportunity to demonstrate your best performance in English, but also good for the institutions because, again, it gives them greater confidence in what they're seeing. And one other thing that's important that we can note is when we make changes like this, it's because we've done the research to make sure that they will not in any way be detrimental to a test taker. Instead, they are actually proven to be beneficial and do not hinder the validity or the reliability of the test. We want to make sure that everything that we do is of benefit to the test taker and helps their objective in pursuing their college dreams. And excuse me, we do find that these additional data points are also informative for you as test takers, should you choose to test again, because it's information you can use to improve your performance. Next slide, please. I mentioned before that we shortened the test, and as you can see here, what that meant for us was we really just eliminated 1 or 2 questions in some of the sections, and 3 of the sections, as a matter of fact. We made no changes to writing, but we did shorten the tasks in speaking, listening, and reading. Still being able to give you solid content to demonstrate your ability, but also able to give you the opportunity to show the full range of your proficiency in English. Next slide, please. The test takers that we work with often find that they're curious to know, well, if I take the IBT, what would my scores be like on another assessment? Or perhaps they've already tried the IELTS assessment and they want to see what would be the difference on the two. So we've created a comparison tool, again, based on research, over 1,100 students who took both TOEFL, IBT, and IELTS at the same time to give us this kind of data. So we've created a tool that you can see, you can access through that link. The top part is actually a slide rule so that you can see right now it's resting on a 6 IELTS score, which is equivalent to a 72 on a TOEFL IBT score scale, so that students can get a sense of where they fall. But institutions use this tool as well. So you'll find that that's helpful to know that they also have great confidence in the research behind the tool that we've generated. Next slide, please. I mentioned a bit about the super scores before, which is another common term. Those of you who have taken the SAT or the ACT may have heard that phrase already. But the My Best Scores takes a look at the scores for anyone who has tested more than once on the TOEFL IBT and takes your best section scores for each of the 4 sections, brings them into a separate box and highlights them, adds them together to come out with your My Best Total score. So that automatically they are calculated. You don't have to do anything extra. And we present it to you and to the institutions so that those schools who are willing to accept your My Best scores for admission and or for scholarship can use that information and give you the opportunity to meet their requirements in fewer test attempts. Thank you. Next slide, please. And this is how it would look, let's say, if you tested twice, right? So if you had taken the reading section, you can see on the test day 1, and you did your best performance in reading and listening on those 2 days, but your best performance in speaking and writing was your second test attempt. By the institution looking at your My Best scores, they are now focusing on the 20 in reading, the 22 in listening, the 19 in speaking, and the 19 in writing, which meets their minimum requirement of a total score of 80, which could not be said when you look at just your single test date scores. So therefore, the institution could offer you admission with the 80 by accepting the My Best. So that's why we think it's a definite benefit to the test taker, but also to the university to be able to count you amongst their enrolled students. Next slide, please. I mentioned as one of the enhancements, the instant scoring of the reading and listening. And again, we can do that because the reading section and the listening section are the only 2 parts of the test that are scored automatically by the computer. We use humans and artificial intelligence combined to score the other 2 sections of the test. Giving you these unofficial scores are really a boon. And when we look at the enhanced speaking scoring section, where we combine that artificial intelligence and a human rater, we are capitalizing on the fact that the human rater, raters, those who are scoring for us that we use, are people who are ESL, English as a second or other language educators, who have an average of about 15 years experience in the field, working in an average of about 3 different countries, so that they know the range of experience and the breadth of experience that they can have in students who are multilingual. So they have a very good understanding of what to expect at the different metrics that we set forth in scoring these assessments. So that combination allows us to work with the AI aspect to just make sure that we're checking the grammatic and vocabulary aspects of the sentence. We want to make sure that it makes grammatical sense as well as cognitive sense as to what you've written. So that combination with the speech rater has really been quite a plus. Next slide, please. That full-length practice test is a wonderful opportunity for you to experience exactly what the test will be like on test day before it ever happens. It can let you know how to move between the sections of the test, what functionality is available within each section, how to answer each of the questions. Some might require you to highlight something, some might require you to circle or click on a certain button. So you want to be familiar with all of those options before you actually sit and take the test on test day. So we strongly encourage you to utilize this. Next, please. One of the best and most outstanding and popular resources we have for test preparation is our MOOC, our massive open online course. The TOEFL MOOC, the Insider's Guide, is available on the edX platform, and it lets you take control of when you practice for the test. It is free and it's self-paced. So let's say you're a student who is very strong in 3 of the skills, but maybe your writing is not necessarily your strongest skill. So you can choose to, for example, instead of doing the entire 6-week MOOC, you may choose to just join for the week where they're working on the writing skills. That's a possibility. Some students will want to do all 6 weeks. All of that is possible. Some students may want to do 2. It is great that you have this opportunity. And since it's free and always available, some students have also found that they come back to it and refresh themselves before they test again. Again, a wonderful opportunity, and it incorporates quizzes and videos because we know everybody learns differently. So we try to capitalize on all the different learning styles to help you achieve your best possible score. Next slide, please. All of the test prep products that we offer, the books, the resources, the exercises, are available on our mobile app, and that's the TOEFL Go. And you'll find that you can access it both on Android or on iPhone through the Apple Store or Google Play, so that you'll be able to utilize it. Now, the TOEFL Go app itself is free, and you'll find that excuse me, we have a mix of free test prep products as well as those that are nominally priced. And we even offer bundles because we know that some students have found a certain sequence of the test prep products are particularly productive. So we've offered a discount on those bundles. So take a look at it, see what works best for you, and you'll find some great resources there. Next slide, please. Now, the student planner is another option. It is an 8-week modular breakdown of preparing for the test. Now, some students have found that their schools have also utilized the test prep planner and they're using it as part of the curriculum. So you may find that if you're doing that in school, combining that with maybe the MOOC at home is a nice combination. But both the MOOC and the student planner give you a great opportunity to, if you are doing it on your own, pace yourself to prepare for the test. And since this is in a online format, the scoring rubric is included so that you can score your own quizzes that you take as part of the student planner. Next slide, please. So why should you take the TOEFL test? Well, aside from the great resources that I've mentioned and the fact that we want you to succeed, it should be the fact that the TOEFL test measures academic English skills in the way that you're going to use them in the classroom. That is why universities rely so heavily on it. and we think it is a great option for you. The TOEFL test also is truly fair and unbiased in the scoring. We remove the scoring from the actual test center. We instead do it remotely, either by computer for the 2 sections, as I mentioned, or a combination of computer and human raters who, for you, are anonymous, but you are also anonymous to them. They are trained professionals who have worked with international students who speak multiple languages for many years. The TOEFL test also gives you a real head start over your peers to prove your proficiency, because again, it's university level English that we're focusing on. So it does get you noticed, and faculty and admissions officers do appreciate the fact that you are already proving that you're ready for university study. Next slide, please. Now, I know this is kind of small print, but you can see we have many links here for both test takers and advisors to access. And these you can also find if you go onto our TOEFL website. But all of these are available. And you'll find that in the first 4 links, we're focusing first and foremost on those videos that can help you prepare for the different sections of the test. Again, if you know that there's a particular section or skill that you struggle with, you could focus in on it this way, or you can just review all of them. The Advisor Toolkit has a great many resources in it that both students and advisors should utilize. And then there's the test registration link that explains and demonstrates how you can register for the test. And there's also additional information in the bulletin and forms that lets you know how you can go about the actual registration process online, or if you need to register for a test with accommodations. If you have any learning or physical disabilities, that information is also provided there. Next slide, please. Many of these links are also going to prove fruitful for you. In particular, these are focusing first and foremost on the preparation resources that we have. And the TOEFL TV, the YouTube channel, is a really nice mix of videos that we, of course, have provided, but also videos that outsiders have created. Oftentimes we have ESL educators, English as a second or other language educators, who have made videos about learning the different aspects of English and posted those. So you'll find that many of these are good resources. I strongly want to point out the last 2 links, the test center locations and dates. That's an important link because you can go to it without ever having created a registration profile, but you can use it to find out where you can take the test in a physical test center. And that's tremendously helpful because you can test anywhere so long as travel restrictions allow. And you'll also find that last link, the test day experience video, lets you know what to expect if you are testing in a test center, what the procedures will be like, how you're expected to conduct yourself on that day. So definitely visit all of those. Next, please. Now, let's look a little deeper about the registration process. That easier online registration that I mentioned earlier, again, it's available to be done on your phone, which is tremendously helpful as you're traveling around and trying to get about. You'll find that being able to use it for either the Apple or an Android is great. And that Google Maps feature really does pinpoint down to the street level so that you can truly see where on that street your test center would be located. It is up to date, so that way also it takes into account any recent developments on the street. But it does make it much easier for you to be able to register for your tests. Next, please. The TOEFL Official App is probably the newest asset we have to offer. Now, this is also available on both Google Play or App Store. So you'll find that it has even more functionality. You can get all of the test prep materials on there. You can, of course, get to the TOEFL website, but you'll also find that it has the Google Google Maps feature built into it too, so that you can utilize it as well. And it is very handy to stay abreast of all the different options that we have available. Next, please. When you talk about registering, you're going to find that there's ideally a process, and first and foremost, it is to create your online profile. You can create your profile even though you may not be ready to pick your test date the same day, but at least start the process by creating the profile. The profile is important because that's also where you're going to come back to time and time again to not only view your scores, but to order any test prep materials, to send your scores to an institution, also just to stay current if you need to change any of your information. So you want to create it at the link that you see on screen. You need to make sure that your name is on your identification documents is exactly the way you enter it in your profile. And that's important because it's a part of the registration check-in on test day, whether you're testing in person in a test center or online at home on the home edition. Your identification documents will be compared to your registration materials. And that name has to match exactly, or you will not be able to complete the test at that time. We think that that's important because in a system, we need to make sure that we're looking at the exact person who tested. And again, if you're requesting testing accommodations for any disability that you may have, we want to recommend that you reach out to us first and foremost before you register, because there might be additional services or software we need to make sure that is available for you in that particular testing environment or on your own computer in order for you to be able to test successfully. So definitely visit the link that you see on screen. Next slide, please. Again, to create that profile, you want to visit here. And even those of you who are students who are testing with disabilities, you can create your profile first and foremost, and then reach out to us for additional information. Next, please. And when you are creating that profile, there are some key things to keep in mind. You want to confirm the location and the reporting time in your profile, excuse me, when you are ready to test, because this is the spot where this kind of information is going to be. So before you go to your test center, you want to make sure you've got that address correct. If you are sending your scores to institutions, please know that you can send scores for free for up to 4 institutions at a time if you select them at least 24 hours before your test. If you fail to enter them before the 24 hours before the test, you will have to pay a fee to send your scores to those institutions. So why not take advantage of the fact that you have 4 for free? If you have less than 4, that's also okay. Enter as many as you have. So even if you know that there's only 1 school you want to send your scores to, please enter it. You want to visit that profile to be able to view all of your test scores, and that's important. You'll be able to see them approximately 10 days after the test, and you'll be able to see them as long as the scores are valid. So for the entire 2 years that the scores are valid, you'll be able to go back to that profile and see them. You'll use that profile again to register for any additional test dates if you choose to, or to reschedule your appointment in case something comes up and you need to move the date. You're also going to use it to order additional score reports to send to more institutions if you so desire. If you need to update your contact information, for example, if you change your email address or you move and your physical address is different, you can change that there. What you cannot change on your own is your name or your date of birth. So if you get married and your surname changes, you would need to contact ETS TOEFL so that we can work with you on that. You want to also go back into your test taker profile to review your profile history, such as what have you done so far? Did I remember to send my scores to such and such a school? Did my payment clear for this, that, or the other thing? So it's a handy resource to have. Next, please. Now we're going to take a look at our option to take the TOEFL IBT test at home. We call it the IBT Home Edition. Next slide, please. This test came about, as you know, excuse me, at the start of the pandemic, because once test centers and really much of life began to shut down in March of 2020. TOEFL realized that when the centers were closed, there were still students who wanted to be able to pursue their dreams of higher education. And in order to do that, they still were required to submit a TOEFL test score. And in order to do that, we had to create a way for them to take the test. So that meant we created the Home Edition. It is the exact same test that you would take at a test center, the same content, the same format, the same questions, the same on-screen experience. It has the exact same features, including the My Best scores, instant scoring of the reading and listening at the end of the test, the same price, payment options, scoring, and score reporting features. Next slide, please. The differences are that you will be able to take it at home. And again, this is a benefit because at this point in time in particular, when you're in the midst of a very difficult flare-up with COVID, it allows you to stay safe and stay healthy and to protect those who are also in your household by being able to test within your home. And since it's available that way, students find also that they are less stressed about taking the test. You're using your own computer equipment, your own webcam, whether it's built into the computer or laptop that you're using, or a separate standalone one. And during the testing event, you are monitored online the entire time by a human proctor. Next slide, please. So the on-screen experience is exactly the same as what you'd have whether you're testing in a test center or at home. The Home Edition is convenient. We offer it 24 hours a day on 4 different test days, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. And the benefit of that is if your household is anything like mine, it might be a little bit noisy or busy when everybody's up during the day. So maybe you want to test once others have gone to bed or when people have left to go to work and you can be at home alone and it's quiet. We do ask that test takers be alone in the room when they're testing. So that's important. You have that human proctor who is monitoring you online, again, as part of security and safety. But the fact that the test itself is offered on that laptop or computer and you're able to test in a steady progress. There's no interruptions. The registration experience, again, you can register online, you can register on your phone. And it is accepted by over 11,000 institutions, organizations, and fellowship programs worldwide because it is exactly the same test as what we give in a test center, but it's done with a decided emphasis on concern for your safety and security and health. So that's the benefit of the Home Edition. Next slide, please. At this time, are there any questions about the TOEFL that I may answer before we go on to the GRE portion? No? Okay. I see we're running a bit over time, so let me go right into GRE, and then we can take any questions at the very end.
Sure. Just give me a moment to load the slides, and it'll be up in a second. Okay.
Very good. Thank you, Siddharth.
But Michelle, what can definitely be appreciated is how alive and how dynamic TOEFL has been. You know, with the changes you brought in, especially the last part when you talked about 24-hour testing. I think that was very, very essential, especially keeping in mind that Indians may not have, or students across the world may not have access to being alone in a room. So I think that's fantastic. But please, thank you so much for that.
I agree with you. I think that that's made a world of difference for ETS to be that compassionate. And we've done the same also with the GRE test. And why don't we get started with the GRE slides if we can, please,
Sure.
Siddharth. Okay, so with the GRE general test, that is the test. GRE offers two tests, a general test and a subject test. The GRE general test is the one that is used for admission for graduate, business, and law school. And it really does make the difference to your future. Next slide, please. So we're going to touch first on an overview of the test itself. We'll talk about the fact that it is also offered as a home test as an option, some general tips and strategies, tools to help you prepare, additional GRE program offerings to help you stand out, and again, some resources. Next slide, please. So we'll get right into that overview. So the GRE general test has been around even longer than TOEFL and really is used first and foremost for admission to masters, specialized masters in business, law programs, MBA, JD, doctoral programs, and awarding fellowships. The reason why we're able to be used for all of those is because it is assessing your ability to evaluate and synthesize a great deal of information at a very high level. And the scores are good for 5 years because we know that students who are applying for a master's may also go on to get their PhD. So it's important to have a longer shelf life to the scores. Next slide, please. Right now, more than 1,300 business school programs around the world accept GRE for their MBA admissions. And that's important because we know that there are students who want to pursue an MBA, often in combination with other degrees. For example, engineering and an MBA are a very popular combination. So we know that students want to be able to get greater exposure and experience in their careers by having all of these resources at their disposal and being able to take one assessment that will work for both engineering school and also for their MBA is a great benefit rather than taking two separate tests. And being able to go to the business school that you choose to anywhere around the world also can enhance your professionalism, but also you as a benefit to that particular company or organization. Next slide, please. We currently have a growing number of law schools that are accepting the GRE. Right now, nearly 70 law schools are accepting it, and it's been mostly US based, but there have been a few international ones, very few, who have also accepted it. And in the case of the US law schools, they are accepting it for their JD program. And that also has been quite important because students want to get the experience and the exposure of working in a variety of different legal settings or being able to practice law, international law. And that's a real advantage. So keep in mind that it is something that is continuing to grow more and more. Next slide, please. We offer the test, the GRE general test, in over 1,000 test centers worldwide in over 160 countries. But you'll also find that for many students, they like the opportunity to have that experience where they are maybe studying for their undergraduate degree. Some students will rather prefer to do it where they're currently working or if they're home on vacation. All of those are possibilities. So again, you can test wherever you are in one of those 160 countries. Next slide, please. The general test really has 3 portions or 3 sections to it. We consider each section of a test its own separate entity. So we do not combine the scores when we report them. There's analytical writing. That section you take first. Then there is a verbal reasoning section and a quantitative reasoning section. The verbal reasoning and the quantitative reasoning sections are utilizing your ability to analyze what is presented to you and determine or reason which is the correct answer out of the multiple choice answers offered. The analytical writing gives you the opportunity in the 2 tasks to provide your persuasive analytical view and opinion. The test will also include an unscored research unscored section or research section, that does not count towards your scores. And as you can see in the unscored section, you cannot tell which section it is, but it would be a repeat of either verbal or quantitative. It gives us additional information, as does the research section. But the research section will be clearly marked as research, and you'll know that it is intended for that purpose. The total testing time is 3 hours and 45 minutes, including the timed breaks that are built into the test. Next slide, please. Now we're going to take a closer look at each section of the test. So the analytical section comprises 2 tasks. One, as you can see, is analyzing an issue. You're going to analyze an issue or develop an argument with reasons and or examples to support your position. And again, we give you the prompt that you're to work from. In the case of analyzing an argument, again, we give you a prompt and ask you to assess the logical soundness of a given argument according to the specific task directions. And you're obviously using your keyboard to type your response, and you'll have the basic functionality of a regular keyboard when you're writing that. But you will not be able to go out to the internet and get any additional sources. It really is meant just to get a sense of how you can craft your responses in a timed format. Next slide, please. When we take a look at the verbal section, here, again, I mentioned it's multiple choice, and there are really 3 different types of questions that you'll have in this section. There'll be reading comprehension, where you're going to either select one answer or multiple answers. And then there's a select in passage, and that means that you will use your cursor to highlight the appropriate answer that is within the passage of text on the screen. Text completion is also known as fill in the blank, where you'll enter the information that is missing, or actually choose the correct information that would fill in that blank. And then sentence equivalence, where you're finding what would be the most suitable answer of the ones that we present. Next slide, please. And in the quantitative reading section, we do provide a built-in on-screen calculator that you can access by clicking the calculator button. So it's not constantly available on screen, because we know for some students from our research that is too visually distracting. So instead, we provide a button and you can click on it to make it appear. If you choose to use it. We do provide scratch paper, and some students would prefer to work out the problems themselves rather than use the calculator, but it's nice to have the option. In the case of the quantitative section, the question types available there are quantitative comparison, where again, you're comparing charts and graphs, multiple choice, where you're selecting one answer or multiple answers, and numeric entry, where again, we might be asking you to tell us what would be the percentile of a particular answer. And then we also focus on basic mathematics skills and elementary mathematical concepts of algebra, arithmetic, geometry, and data analysis. Because the general test is designed for all degrees at the graduate level, we are not going to get into specific math necessary for certain disciplines. Instead, they are general math-related processes. Next, please. So here's an example of what you would see on the screen. In this case, in the quantitative section, that on-screen calculator that I mentioned is actually accessed by the second button in that upper circle, if you're going from the left. By clicking on that, that made that calculator appear. And this is an example of a question where the numeric entry needed to be entered in that box where you see the 33. Up above here, you can move freely within a section. So within the quant section, you could exit the section, mark a question to flag it and come back to it. You could flag it or mark it to review. You could click the help button for information that may help you get through this section. You can go back and you could go to the next question. Next slide, please. And let me just take a sip. Now, this section level adaptive process works in the quantitative, in the GRE test. We use a section level adaptive format so that we can help you bring forward your best possible performance. So each of these sections offers questions that range in difficulty from easier to more difficult. In the very first section that's presented to you is moderately challenging content. And that again is our baseline, right? So everybody performs and takes that section. How they do in that section, how they perform, indicates the rigor of the next section. So for example, if a student performed well, as you can see by the most purple arrow at the top there, in that first section, then they get a more challenging section as their second part, because there are 2 verbal and 2 quant sections that they'll get. So in the second quant or verbal, it would be more challenging, so that we could then see where they would ultimately score. A student who seemed to struggle quite a great deal in the moderately challenging section 1 would get a section 2 that was less challenging in content, but would still give them the opportunity to improve their score, so that way they could get a score on that score range of 130 to 170 that could still make them a viable candidate for admission, but would not hinder them and give them a score that would definitely be detrimental to their overall performance. So these section level adaptive kinds of tests give you the opportunity to improve your performance as the test moves on. Next slide, please. Let's take a look at on test day. So on test day, you'll find that you have the benefit of testing either at home or in the test center, again, because ETS is concerned about your safety and your health. And we hold some of the exact same practices as we do with TOEFL. The general test for GRE that's offered at home is exactly the same as in the test center. As a matter of fact, it's called the same. We did not change the name. It's the same score scale. It's offered worldwide. It's identical in content and format. You are also monitored online the entire time by a human proctor provided through ProctorU, and it's accessible with extended time and breaks, extra breaks if you need it for testing with accommodations. Next slide, please. So the computer requirements that you see here for the GRE general test are actually the same also for the TOEFL test as well. We do require that your computer be either a desktop or a laptop. You cannot take the test on a tablet or a mobile device. It has to operate on either the Windows 10 or 8 platform or the Mac 10.5 or 10.13 High Sierra or higher. You need to use either the Chrome or the Firefox browser. And the speaker and microphones either need to be built into your computer system or be external, but you cannot use a headset or earphones. We need to be able to see your ears at all times to make sure that, again, there are no speaking devices or inappropriate devices in your ears. And the camera equipment, again, the camera can be built into your laptop or desktop, or it can be a standalone webcam that you're using. But we're going to ask you to use it to do a 360-degree view of your room to make sure that you're showing us you're testing alone, and also a view of your tabletop desktop surface for testing. Next slide, please. When you come to take the test at home, we do require, and this is true again for both assessments, that you use either a small whiteboard to write your notes on, which can be erased at the end of the test in full view of the proctor, or that you use a white piece of paper inside a transparent sheet protector, and you write on that plastic with an erasable marker, again, at the end of the test in full view of the proctor. This again is a matter of security. If you were testing in the test center, we would collect the scratch paper at the end of the test that you would be using. So this is just the counterpoint to that. Next slide, please. Before the start of the test, we're going to ask you to run a final check of security systems to make sure that everything is functional and that your computer will operate correctly, because we want you to have as smooth a testing experience as possible. We want to make sure that you close all your browsers and applications because you won't need them for the test. And we want to make sure that no other devices are running on your internet at the same time. Again, because we don't want there to be anything to interfere with the transmission of the test to your system. And then when it's time for your test, we'll have you log in to start your test link in your confirmation email. And keep in mind, though, as a matter of security, if you are more than 12 minutes late to the start of your test will be canceled. So promptness is important. And if there's any reason for you to need to change your appointment, certainly you can do that proactively before the test day and before the test starts. Next slide, please. Let's talk about some tips and strategies then to do well on the GRE general test, whether it's at home or in the test center. You can approach the test taking more of your own personal testing strategies, and everybody has developed those sort of mechanisms that help them do well on a test. And some of the things that we keep in mind are the fact that you can utilize the features of the GRE to change your answers within a section, mark the question to come back to it, skip questions if you need to come back, and navigate freely within each time section. And we have found that for GRE test takers who do change their answers, they typically have changed them for the better, which is an interesting point. Next slide, please. We think that these tips and strategies will help you become familiar with the questions and the formats and directions beforehand. And we think that that's important too. It takes a lot of the stress out of the experience if you're able to do that. We want you to be aware of the time that you have in each section so that you can make the most of it. And certainly answer every question because you only get a point if you get the question correct. You do not lose any points if you don't answer it. You do not lose points if you answer it wrong. You only get a point if you answer it correctly in the case of the GRE general test. So try to answer every one. And use the knowledge you have to figure out the answers to unfamiliar questions because, again, it's a multiple choice test, so the answer is there. Next slide, please. Don't waste time on questions that you find extremely difficult. Since no question carries any greater weight than any other one, just try to answer them. You want to check that review screen if you utilize that option before you finish a section because you want to make sure that you answered all of the questions. Next slide, please. Now we'll talk about ways to help you prepare. So section overviews for each of the measures are available on the GRE website. And I think that it's important to take the time to look at those as you are thinking about taking the test, as you're preparing, just so that you understand what it is that we want you to accomplish in each section. That alone will take some of the concern away from the test experience. Use the Power Prep Test Preview tool. Again, it lets you become familiar with the keyboard functionality that you'll have to utilize during the test, as well as the question types. Take that online practice test, the Power Prep online practice test. You can do it in timed or untimed fashion. The benefit of taking it timed is it lets you see how well you do in that experience. There are 2 in that practice test. Take the first one timed, see how well you do, practice, brush up on any areas where you're weak. Take that second one timed again, see how you improved. The GRE Math Review and Math Conventions are great free resources for anyone who is not quite proficient in math or who maybe has not done the sort of math that is required on this test in a number of years. Again, it is very basic math. And depending on what you've done since university, you may not have done this sort of math like algebra in a number of years. Next slide, please. And let's move ahead and look at some additional offerings. Alrighty. You'll find that there are some graduate programs that might require you to take a GRE subject test. We offer 4 tests, as you can see listed here. These are paper-based tests that are given only in test centers. So right now, they are on limited offer and around the world, obviously due to COVID. And as you can see, they're only given just 3 times a year. So you must be very planful if your program requires this to make sure that you can fit it in. And certainly work with your program if you think that there's any possibility that you may not be able to complete it in time for your application cycle. Next slide, please. We offer the GRE search service. Sometimes students know that they want a particular discipline to study, but they may not know where they want to attend. So for example, while you might know that you wish to attend a university in the US, you may not know which part of the US you want to be in. Perhaps you've heard about the Midwest, but you need more information. So participating in the search service would let you indicate what you are looking for in a graduate program, the discipline, the size of the institution, the location in that particular country, the size of the student body, any other features. And every time that matches with what a university says it offers, then that university is able to get your email address and send you a communication to begin to inform you about what they offer and how best they can meet your needs. It's a free service to you, and the institutions want to be able to communicate with you through that opportunity. It's certainly worthwhile if, again, you're uncertain where to apply. Next slide, please. Grad school match is slightly different. So some students are not quite sure, excuse me, what particular disciplines they're interested in, or they're not quite sure what grad school offers, what program. So for the very introductory level of searching for graduate education, this grad school match is a great resource, and it lets you, again, communicate directly with program staff who can mentor you through that application process. So this is very dynamic and a great deal more informative. It's sort of like having your own personal advisor in this process. Next slide, please. And let's look at some of the other resources that GRE itself provides to you. You'll find that we offer at the GRE link below, information bulletin for test preparation, the bulletin for disability information, information again for students who are pursuing their MBA or their law school degree. Next slide, please. And then in general, if you have more GRE questions, you can contact us there. So I think that concludes both the TOEFL and the GRE portion, and I'll turn it back over to you to conduct our general Q&A and information.
Hi, Michelle. That was a very, very interesting presentation. And you'll find generally that students take a little time, especially in India, to warm up to the idea of asking questions. But I'm sure they will come across. There was one question by Kanchan. I think she talks about the possibility of running 2 devices on the same internet. So she said it was mentioned that we cannot run other devices on the same internet. If I cannot use Wi-Fi and mobile data, both, since more devices will be used on them, what should I do then? That is one query by Kanchan.
Sure. So we have found that for the test to operate ideally at home, that the fewer devices you have actively on the system at the same time, the better. And that's because we don't want the test to fail at any point during the process. So if it's at all possible to not have the mobile device fully functional while you're testing, that would be great. We know that as part of the security measures, we'll have to ask you to use it, obviously, to take a picture and demonstrate, that your surroundings. But we would want you to turn off the apps on it that you would normally have active. I think by doing that step, you should be okay.
All right. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I think I'm going to be the interlocutors, and I'll keep pushing questions to you, Michelle, if you're okay with that.
That would be fine. Thank you.
Absolutely, my pleasure. So is it mandatory, asks Sampath, to give both the GRE and TOEFL? All right. So if you don't mind, I'll take that up, Michelle. So Sampath, the TOEFL is given to prove your provenance over the English language. You're going to go and study in an institution that's going to teach you in English. So therefore, the university wants to know, are you comfortable in your English language? Your communication skills, are they sound enough? So the reason TOEFL is given is to prove you can communicate and listen and basically listen, talk, read, and write. That's what is checked. GRE is more about, as Michelle just spoke to you, it's about a test about your ability to analyze things and present things and to be able to answer questions that will show your ability or your mental skills to a university. How good a student are you for their program? That's what GRE will do. Both are mandatory, both are different tests. Michelle, please do go ahead and add on to that.
I think you summed it up quite accurately. The GRE is considered an admissions entrance test, and solely for that purpose. So it is really meant to gauge your level of readiness for graduate study. And that is solely its intent. And therefore, it is required by more applicants going to graduate school than obviously the TOEFL would be, because not everyone is multilingual.
Perfect. Absolutely. Correct. And so Kaushik says, do we have an option to give the exam at the center as well with the current situation? I think, Siddharth, GRE centers in India are open.
Well, yes, absolutely. If you look at the current stats over the next 35-day window, you will see that 85% of our test centers for both TOEFL and GRE are open across India. And in fact, we have the widest test center network with over 125 centers across India. So you would be able to now book a test slot, towards the end of this month. We are seeing that probably from the mid of June, more and more cities are opening up and you would be able to travel. So you can choose whatever is your preference. If you find it more comfortable to take it at a test center, you can do that either for the TOEFL or for the GRE test.
Right. And thank you for that, Siddharth. And GVS Bhargav wants to know, can we take the GRE and TOEFL any day in the year, or is it some specific months that we can take the test? The answer is, when you're comfortable and ready, GVS Bhargav, go ahead and appear for the exam. So generally it takes around, if you heard Michelle, around 6 weeks of preparation for doing well in the TOEFL. And working with Indian students for the last now 25 years, I have seen that we take around 3 months to be really ready to appear for the GRE test. So when you're ready for the test, do take the date. You can appear for the test at any time, at your convenience. All right. Wow, there are a lot of questions coming up, Michelle. All right. So Ravalika has asked, how much duration of time does it take for preparation to get? Oh, I think I just answered that inadvertently. So it takes roughly around 3 months, Ravalika, to be ready for appearing and doing well in the GRE test.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for the response.
Absolutely, my pleasure. And is GRE consider norm for master's admissions of spring 22? The answer is that yes, GRE got waived by a lot of universities for 21. But if I'm not wrong, Michelle, a lot of universities for certain programs, even in 21, insisted on the GRE score being presented. So my gut feel is that for spring of 22 and for fall 22, GRE will gain its preeminence again of being required, of being compulsory.
Yes, what we're finding with a lot of the institutions is that they're assuming that 2022 academic year, things will begin to return to normal and that they will resume their normal practices of requiring the assessments.
Right. Great. Wow, these questions, even as we talk, they keep coming in. So Chenmai wants to know, for getting an accept from a good university, what are the important factors? All right, Chenmai, I'll cover that in the next. I think most of the questions really are now coming towards admissions. So what are the best score? So if you don't mind, Michelle, I'll just take up that presentation. And if there are any more queries thereafter, I would love it that you could answer those as well. So with your permission.
Certainly.
All right. Thank you. Awesome.
Thank
All
you.
right. So let's talk about the concept of studies abroad. And let me share my screen and also at the same time, get off the screen as well. So our host for the evening, of course, is IMFS, which has been, as you heard me earlier, in existence since 1997, at a time at which most of you probably were not born. So I've been teaching the GRE now for close to 30 years, and I have been responsible for sending a lot of kids abroad, and a lot of people assume that that has contributed to brain drain. Well, I will counter that somewhere later in the talk today. But for the moment, I think because of the COVID-19 rampaging through most of the world, the constant gripe that I hear is this the right time to go abroad and study? Well, this question emanates basically because of the issues that COVID has brought in. There is obviously health scare, and on top of the health scare, what you're seeing is great economic distress as well. So here is the deal. Economic distress, but let's start with addressing that. Number one, this is not the first coronavirus and shall not be the last coronavirus that the world has seen. And I hope I'm not prophetic on that. But way back in 2003, the world was hit by a coronavirus called the SARS epidemic, which originated out of China. The Chinese economy nosedived, but within a year it revived, and it did better actually in 2004 than it did in 2003 and 2, right? And if you go back into more recent times, in 2015, we had the MERS epidemic, again a coronavirus, which hit the Republic of Korea, took their economy down, but their economy was quick to revive within a year. This gave rise to the idea of the V-shaped recovery model. A lot of economists pushed this idea that because economies nosedived so quickly, they also recovered equally quickly. So that V-shaped recovery model came up, which of course was a very optimistic viewpoint. And to the other side of the spectrum, you had the pessimistic viewpoint pushed across by other economists who said, what are you talking about? Why don't you understand that the two events you're talking about were epidemics? What we're seeing now is a pandemic. This is more close or akin to what happened in 1929, when the entire world was shaken by the Great Depression. And it took close to 3.5 years for the world to come out of that great economic disparity. And in more recent memory, in 2008, when US, of course, witnessed the Great Recession, which of course moved across borders. And again, the Great Depression took around 3.5 years for the world to recover. And this, therefore, allowed economists to come up with a new theory, the U-shaped recovery model, where they talked about once economies go down, they shall take some time to recover. Well, I am not an economist. So whether it be the V-shaped recovery or it be the U-shaped recovery, this is what I can tell you with certainty. Number one, if you decide to go abroad, and you must decide to go abroad to study, you do that, you will enter at the earliest in any country, be it America or some other country, at the earliest sometime next year, right? Somewhere around August of next year, probably. And thereafter, your master's degree, if you go for one, is going to take you at least 2 years from there on, which means you are going to graduate 3 to 3.5 years from today. And even if I were to take the pessimistic viewpoint, the world shall be on a recovery model. And when industries are recovering from a slump, they are eager, they are hungry for fresh, young, skilled people like you. Therefore, you need to look at the end of this COVID-19, there is bound to be a lot of opportunities for you. And that is where, if you're having the right skills, you can make the most of the situation. Please understand that I will hit 56 years in the next couple of months. And in these 55 years that I have gone around the sun, I have witnessed change, right? My dad, God bless his soul, he was a railway locomotive engineer. And I remember going along with him when I was younger on trains that were powered by steam locomotives. But at the same time, in the last 5 to 10 years, I have witnessed change where I've gone across various continents and ridden cars that were driven by electricity or by battery power, or segways powered by battery. You, as students, have witnessed change. Think about this. 15 years ago, where was your smartphone? You didn't have one. But today, the smartphone is an all-pervasive, intrusive part of your life. So there was change. You witnessed it. And I believe that the next 5 to 10 years, changes are bound to happen, and even faster, in a more precipitous manner. And if you are not armed to succeed in a new, changing, emerging economy, believe me, you'll be left far behind in the race. And therefore, instead of talking about COVID and how it is going to pull down or has pulled down people, what you need to do is look at the brighter side and look at also the need for you to go abroad and learn. And think of this, 1200 years ago, India was a country that brought in people, attracted people from around the world. I remember that the two wonderful institutions we had, Nalanda and Takshashila, there were close to 10,000 students of international origin studying in these great world-class institutions. So obviously, over the centuries, students have been voyagers seeking knowledge. Wherever you got the most and the best knowledge, people went. So today, if you're going abroad to the West to study, it is not brain drain. It is looking at you getting the best knowledge from the best possible source. And that, in today's time, of course, is the West of the world. And therefore, America, of course, is like a beacon of hope. And what you also need to remember is that as an international student, you are a very important commodity. Look at any master's program at a global level, and you'll find that close to 50 to 55% of students at a master's or a higher level come from foreign lands. And if you reduce that down to IT, to computer sciences, or management of information systems, those domains, that figure goes up to a whopping 70, sometimes 80%. So obviously, the world economy is run by students of international origin who go abroad and study and then empower the engines of growth in various countries around the world. In fact, if you look at the last normal year we had, 2019, America ended the year with close to 16 lakh jobs lying unfulfilled in the high skills domain area. And that 16 lakh jobs is a huge number. Look at Europe, they had close to 10 lakh jobs lying unfulfilled. And the word unfulfilled means primarily that. Jobs were there, people with skills were not there, right? And that is why I look at you, wonderful kids, and I understand one simple fact, that the Chinese students and the Indian students largely dominate this global market. But over the last 3 to 4 years or thereabouts, the Chinese numbers have started to go down. In fact, over the last 1 or 2 years, ever since the COVID-19 was discovered to have come out of the Wuhan Some say the laboratory in Wuhan, some say, of course, the fish market in Wuhan, be that as it may. But there has been a clear linkage between what is happening in the world because of COVID-19 and China. Of course, there have been certain world leaders who've created that linkage, and stuff like, and words like the Kung flu or the Chinese virus have resounded across borders. Resultantly, people of Chinese origin are hesitant to go abroad to study, which means it empowers me to say that the decade that is coming up shall be of the Indian student. You stand to gain the most. So be prepared to take the most out of this emerging scenario and understand that what you have is some amazing skills that the locals don't have. Number two, you've got youth on your side. The average age of India today is below 30, right? Look at Germany, for example. Their average age in the next 15 years is predicted to be around 55 years. Their population today is 81 million. And statistics are showing, and analytics are showing that in the next 10 to 15 years, that figure is going to go down to 60 million people. And that 60 million people, the average age is going to be 55. And that is where you come in, because you plug in serious shortages in the HR market. All right. You are a very precious commodity. And you will find the last part to be extremely funny, that you are also prized because of the money you bring in. It is amazing that the international student, he contributes close to $300 billion to the world economy. In 2019, universities in America received $45 billion as fees paid by students of international origin, which is it's a jaw-dropping number. Think of this. Maybe you are unable to connect to that idea of $45 billion. In 2019, India got $50 billion as FDI, foreign direct investment. Imagine the whole country, we got in $50 billion. Universities in America got $45 billion. Therefore, every country, every university wants you, because you bring in money to their economy, not only by paying tuition fees, but thereafter by working in their economy and helping it grow. So be smart and understand that 4 years ago, America made a wrong choice, right? If Michelle allows me to say that they voted for somebody they should never have done. But they corrected that somewhere in November, I think 8th of November last year, and 20th of Jan this year, you had an amazing, fantastic, progressive thinker who's now become the president of America, and he is now leading a revolution kind of in America. He has appended and gone against all those repressive laws that were passed by Donald Trump and his party, and they kind of went against the very spirit of allowing people to stay back and work. The H1 became rather difficult to garner. All of those laws have been repealed. Literally every week that you read newspapers across the globe, you see that every week you have a new change, a new law that is making US a more friendly, a more investor-friendly place. And by investor, I'm talking obviously about brains. So be ready to go to America and feel the warmth that you used to feel when Barack Obama was, of course, the president of America. The last 4 years, of course, you can, I hope, Control, Alt, and Delete from memory. Here is some amazing data points for you to take home. Look at America. All right, now you as a student want to go there. But I need you to remember that even America wants you to go there. Because if you look at people like Dr. Shokaku, who of course is a fantastic renowned physicist who teaches at the CUNY system in America and New York. Now he propounds this idea, and I thoroughly agree with him, that the F1 H1, and this I'm quoting not verbatim, but I will of course quote as much as I can. He states that the F1 and the H1 is America's secret weapon to dominate the world market, because these people on F and H1, they bring in skills and empower the local industries to do really well. To the extent that immigrants who form 13% of the entire population in America, guess what that 13% has done? That 13% of 340 million Americans, what they have done is since 1970, close to 60% of all Nobel Prizes have been won in America by people of immigrant descent. If you look at the unicorns, close to 50% of all unicorns either are founded or are run by people of immigrant descent, to the extent that almost 40% of Fortune 500 companies in America are also run by people of immigrant descent. Sundar Pichai being one, Indira Nooyi being another, Satya Nadella being, I can go on and on. Look at Sun Microsystems. So obviously, every nation realizes that the international student, he brings in a lot of change into the entire system. So you are a very precious commodity. So you got to be smart and understand which is the ideal country for you to go to. Identify what are the advantages and the disadvantages. Is this a system I'm familiar with? Would I like to go there for this system? For example, if you go to the UK, their programs for a master's degree, even today, are just 1 year. They're theoretical in nature. But if I look at the programs in the United States, they are highly practical driven. For example, a lot of universities, the entire third semester becomes a co-op or a CPT kind of a program where universities like Northeastern, U Cincinnati, what do? They find internships for you. So as a student, I finish off the first 2 semesters, then I work in the summer for an internship, which I need to find by myself. And when I return to campus for my 3rd semester, well, I don't need to go to class. Rather, the university finds me a job in the sphere of my studies, and then I work, and my supervisor, he grades me, and if I'm extremely fortunate, he also pays me. Imagine learning in such a system. Imagine going to a university like Chicago, right? And if I were to learn economics, there are 5 Nobel Prize winners teaching you economics in the University of Chicago, plus Dr. Raghuram Rajan. Who wouldn't want to learn at the hands of such revered faculty? You're given the chance to experiment. Their curriculum is highly flexible. You can twist and change it. They're like drop-down menus. Choose courses as you like. They're extremely practical, hands-on driven. Every Indian kid that I have sent to America has come back saying, wow, I enjoyed the process of learning. It is not theoretical. So identify which system you like and which system you don't like. And if you're somebody who wants to settle down in a country, you need to remember that America has been a beacon of hope for immigrants over the years. What America does as of today is you finish either your undergrad or your grad or of course a PhD, and thereafter you can stay for definitely 1 year and work full time. That is 12 months. But if your program is a STEM designated program, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics degree, then you get an extension of 24 months. And if you look at the Times of India hardly 2 days ago, you'll find a report once again where Joe Biden's administration has ensured that that movement from that 12-month, that extension of 24 months becomes easier and automatic, which had gone into some kind of a problem during the Donald Trump era, has now been wiped off. In fact, if I'm not wrong, in the first 100 days, in fact, in the first 3 days of him taking oath of office, Joe Biden signed 29 ordinances, and a lot of them affected the F and the H1 visa policies. That man knows what he's doing. So you can, on your student visa, stay back and work for up to 3 years, full-time work, and thereafter migrate from the F1, which is the student visa, onto the H1, which is a work visa. And on the H1, you get up to a maximum of 6 years, which means I study for 2 years for my master's degree, and thereafter I can work for up to 9 years and earn money full time. I think that's a fantastic opportunity for every kid. You can't let it pass. Work for 9 years, and then you and I will share a dream at the end of this talk. what you should do thereafter. But of course, if other countries are very wish to go to, well, UK is fantastic, Australia is great, the whole of the EU is superb. But keep in mind that countries like UK today are not very clear about the PR policy. Yes, their masters are of a year, and thereafter you can stay back and work for up to 2 years. In fact, all countries globally will let you stay back and work for 2 years. But Australia will allow you to migrate. Europe will allow you to migrate. In fact, a country like Germany, which I remember 10 years ago, refused to entertain the idea of allowing people to come in and settle down, today is talking of allowing you for not just going there and studying and working, but also becoming a citizen of the country. And I repeat that with emphasis. Go to Germany, study for a year or two, thereafter work for up to 8 years and get a German citizenship. Countries are now evolving and they're understanding that you contribute to the society. The country right on top, the maple leaf, Canada, they have a very clearly stated policy that over the next 2 to 3 years, they will take in 3 million immigrants. And obviously, the immigrants they will take will be ones with high skills, people who can talk the English language and contribute to the society. All of these countries, they will allow you, in fact, the two on your screen right now, Canada and New Zealand, will allow you to finish your master's degree and work for up to 3 years, and thereafter file for the PR. And just for your years, master's degrees in New Zealand are usually of 1 year duration. So study for a year and thereafter you can actually work for up to 3 years and file for PR, which of course, if you don't know, my duty to inform you, is called permanent residency. So in short, identify which country you wish to go to and then prepare the entrance exams. Don't go around giving exams left, right, and center because your friends are giving those exams. Identify which country and which exam is required. Otherwise, why invest the effort or the time or indeed the money into that exercise? But yes, word of caution, should you choose to go to countries that do not speak the English language, for example, if you're a mechanical engineer and you want to focus on automotives, then obviously America is your first preferred country. But then I wouldn't put Germany too far behind. I wouldn't put Japan too far behind either. But the problem, you go to Germany and Japan, you got to learn the local language. Invest the time and the effort, because till you don't know the local language, you are not going to progress too much. What I have learned in my last 30 years of being in the education sector is you need 2 skills to survive. Of course, you need domain skills. You need to have your domain knowledge. But beyond that, what you need to have is communication abilities. That ability to be able to talk and get your ideas across in a convincing manner, equally necessary. So language skills become very, very important for your survival. But of course, the question remains, you want me to go abroad and I want to identify the best possible universities. How do I do that? How do I enter into a top ranked university? Well, no secret, but you need to give some entrance exams. Michelle has, of course, explained to us about the TOEFL and the GRE. So, of course, my presentation will not focus that much on TOEFL and GRE. But yes, let me tell you that TOEFL, if I were you, I would like to appear for the exam somewhere in July end or maybe the first week of August. Do remember that, as Michelle indicated earlier to you, that countries at a global level accept the TOEFL score. And what does TOEFL do? Well, as you've seen earlier, it tests your ability in reading, listening, speaking, and writing. On a score of 120, should you get anything around 100, then you are talking about getting entry into the top ranked universities at a global level. All right. But that's not enough. You also need to give either the GRE or the GMAT. And now increasingly, even management schools are accepting the GRE. Therefore, let's talk only about the graduate record exam. Now, what does the GRE do? You've seen that earlier today. Well, you need to attempt this exam somewhere in September, October of this year. And why September, October? I will show you that in the next few seconds. But here is the deal. While America obviously needs the GRE, you will find that universities like British Columbia or a Toronto, they might not ask you for a GRE score, but should you report a high GRE score, then you get preference for, of course, admission and more importantly for financial aid. Should you choose to apply to countries like, say, Singapore, well, then the two top-ranked universities there, NTU and NUS, they both demand a GRE score of 320 and higher. Of course, a lot of universities in Europe as well demand the SAT and the GRE too. This, of course, is what GRE checks and sees. And I think Michelle has already expanded this idea. So I'll talk only with the score pattern needed. To enter into the top 50 ranked universities, you need to get a 320 out of 340 to make your profile look exciting. But then please understand that these two are entrance exams, both compulsory. TOEFL to prove you know English, you can communicate well. GRE to show that you are, well, it's an entrance test, right? So you need to prove your mental ability, your acuity to be able to succeed in that environment. Both of these are essential, and we'll prefer you get them out of the way by October, because you got to apply somewhere around November of this year for admission to university next year in August. You apply by November, you should have a reply at the latest by March or April of next year. Around this time, you should be having the visa in your hand. Remember that the United States rules state that you can apply for a US visa 120 days prior to your date of entry, which means from April 20th or thereabouts, you can apply for your visa. The earlier, the better. So by June next year, visa in hand, July end or August first week, you should be on your way to a university of your dream. All right. Of course, talking about admissions into American universities or other such universities, you need two more things. The first being what I've covered already and Michelle has in her presentation. The first being your entrance exams. TOEFL to prove your English language, your provenance, your skills in English as a language, and of course, GRE to prove your analytical and mental acuity. In addition to that, you have to have two more things. One, strong academic records. You need to ensure that up to your penultimate year, hopefully your ultimate year as well, you get a very high GPA. And as you enter into the penultimate or ultimate year of your education, the second last or last year of your education, I hope your score graph rises, your cumulative rises. But howsoever it be, in the last semester, either 6 or 8, ensure you get at least an 8, 8.5 or a higher GPA. That is extremely important to enter into, once again, a top rank university. And now the last factor is your profile. And what does profile mean? Well, universities, of course, they want people who've got the mental strength to succeed. But universities also see, are you a good fit for the program? All right. Once they teach you, will be able to contribute to the society and growth of the society. And to prove that, you need to be able to show you have teamwork skills. You can communicate effectively. You can motivate people, lead people if necessary, right? Innovate. And all those abilities you can show via participation in sports and festivals in your colleges, and probably most importantly, your co-curricular activities, where it counts that you took part in projects, in presentations, in seminars, hopefully some internships, and if at all possible, presentation of research papers and publishing of those. And if you've worked, well, that also counts as well. All of these put together makes a profile. It's not one thing that matters. It's a combination of all of these that matters and puts you into a great university. And where does IMFS come in? Well, we help you with of course, preparation for TOEFL and GRE, but beyond that, we help you with admissions to universities of your choice. Remember, We're India's oldest and most successful. And why do I say most successful? Well, we're the only GRE prep class in India to have helped 8 people get the full score. All right. 8 students of IMFS has got the full score, and that primarily has been because of our faculty, our material. Now, I belong to a very old school thought where I insist that our material, what we teach, has to be very strong. And if you put strong material and a well-experienced faculty, and both Nitin, Lathe, and I have got more than 25, 30 years of experience, well, that obviously ensures that you are able to take benefit of both of these resources and ultimately end up doing well. We, of course, are located in Mumbai, and now our branches are growing across India, primarily to the south of India, with branches opening up in Warangal. Coming up in the next 3 months is going to be Visakhapatnam, then that's Vizag, and then moving on to Vijayawada. We have centers coming up in Bangalore, Delhi, and expanding our footprints across India. You can, of course, write to me for more personal replies to your queries. Our email IDs are all in front of you.